All right, welcome to the live stream. A lot to talk about today. We are going to talk about taxes in a bunch of different ways. I may open up the phone lines and take calls from the audience. We will see about that. What else? I don't know. If people have questions, we will talk about them. Super chat is available. I guess I'll go through that right off the top. This is a live stream. This differs from the videos that I upload to YouTube in that this is live unless you're watching a replay. Best and quickest way to participate is to send a super chat. Use the $ at the bottom of the chat window. You will notice in the chat window, by the way, that channel subscribers have little logos next to their name and all sorts of different stuff goes on in the chat. Sign up for membership. There's some coupon codes in the description to get a live thank you during the stream. If you do that, and we get 10 people to do that, I will open up the phone lines. Please don't troll the live chat. We do have today, I've put the live chat over here, and that may be extraordinarily short-lived. Depends, I guess, on what happens with it. It can get pretty bad in the chat. So that'll stay up for a little bit, and if it gets bad, then I will take it away. And you can also become a YouTube channel member with the join button. If and when you do that, you will notice that it conveys all sorts of different benefits to people, including that when you say something in the chat over here, there will be a variety of little icons that pop up next to your name. People already saying it's not going to take long before I pulled the chat off of the screen. And you are probably right. You are probably right. Okay, so we're going to talk about taxes today in a few different contexts. There's sort of two main discussions surrounding taxation that are relevant right now, since it is getting to be tax time, and it's tax time for the first time since the Donald Trump Republican tax reform, which was billed as a tax cut for everybody. It's a tax cut mostly for rich people with some small changes for everyday Americans. And we're going to get into sort of two different elements. Element one is what tax policy is best for the country in terms of the revenue that it provides to the government to do things. Now, if you don't believe that it's good for the government to have money with which to do things, then you're going to have a sort of different perspective on this issue. But the first question I'm going to address briefly is what level of taxation brings in the most money for the government? Then we're going to get into what is the effect at the micro level on people of the tax plan that was passed. And unfortunately, both cognitive dissonance and ignorance are preventing a lot of people from actually understanding what the true and real impact is on them. So first, let's address the issue of taxation at the sort of country level. There are a few different approaches to taxation. One, more often called supply side economics, is that if you cut taxes for the rich and for corporations, this will give them more money with which they will then do things that are good for the economy. And usually the talking points go, if you cut taxes for the rich, they're the job creators, so they will create more jobs. Or if you cut taxes for corporations, they will pour that money back into hiring more people. This doesn't actually make any sense. Okay. And a very simple counterexample explains to us why that is. If you are a business that sells, I don't know, you sell mobile phones, for example. If the demand is for 100 mobile phones per month, and all of a sudden you as a business get a tax cut, why would you go and hire more people if the demand for your phone is still 100 phones per month? That's what we would call stupid. You would go and hire more people if all of a sudden the economy is demanding 200 phones per month. Now you need to manufacture an additional 100 phones, and thus you need the people to do that. So when demand for your product goes up, you would hire more people. If you're a business and you get a tax cut, that's not a reason to go and hire more people. It would be stupid to do that because the number of people you need is determined by the amount of demand for your product or service. So that is not a good approach to figuring out what sort of national taxation is best for government revenue. Donald Trump said those tax cuts will grow the economy so much that then tax revenue will go up because all these people will be earning income and there will be new income taxes. It just hasn't happened. Okay. So, what we know when we look at the science of it, and this includes considerations like what MIT has done in looking at where should the top marginal tax rate be placed, and a lot of other studies, what we get to sort of cut to the chase is that a top marginal tax rate somewhere between 70 and 75% is what maximizes government revenue. Now, does that mean that I'm talking about a 70% total tax rate, that you just get 70% of your money collected in taxes? No. We're talking about a 70% marginal tax rate. That marginal tax rate would start, depending on which idea you look at high incomes of $750,000 a year, $1 million a year, under some plans, even $5 or $10 million a year. So only on earnings above that point would anyone pay that top marginal tax rate. That is what generates the most revenue for the government at the macroeconomic level. Let's now get into the meat of what's being discussed now as people are starting to file their 2018 taxes. And we're getting closer and closer to tax day, which is normally April 15th, unless April 15th falls on a weekend, which it may this year. I don't know, in which case it gets pushed a day or two. There are more and more Americans, including Trumpists, who are complaining that they are getting much smaller tax refunds than last year. Now, this doesn't actually tell us whether people are paying more or less in taxes, okay? And this is where a combination of cognitive dissonance in some people who really are paying more in taxes, but they don't necessarily want to accept it because they voted for their orange Lord and Savior, Donald Trump, and then now their taxes went up. Some people are experiencing cognitive dissonance and their taxes really went up. There's also a big contingent that's just ignorant, and they don't understand that your refund doesn't tell you whether your taxes went up or went down. The simplest example is one that I have given before on the show, which is, imagine for a moment that you earn $50,000 a year, just to make it really simple. You earn $50,000 a year, and last year you paid $10,000 in taxes. Okay, that's a 20% effective tax rate. $50,000 in income, $10,000 in taxes. Your effective rate was 20%. Now, imagine that at your job throughout the year, you had a total of $12,000 in taxes withheld. You made 50 grand, your tax due is 10 grand, you paid 12 grand. What happens when you file your taxes? You get a $2,000 refund. Great. What was your actual tax due? $10,000. Imagine that the next year, the withholding parameters change. So during that year, you still make your $50,000. You still owe $10,000 in actual tax at the end of the year, but you had much less money withheld during the year. You had $9,000 withheld instead of $12,000 withheld. What happens when you file your taxes? You say, IRS, I earned 50K. I've already paid 9K. I owe 10, meaning I cut you a check for $1,000. Did your tax rate go up and down from year one to year two? No change. In both years, you had a 20% effective tax rate. The difference was your withholding. And that is increasingly what is the subject of conversation, which is that, as Fox and Friends discussed on the program yesterday or today, and I will be covering tomorrow on the David Pakman Show, Fox News correctly pointed out that a lot of what is happening is a result of changes to withholding. Now, where Fox is going overboard is they're saying they're laughing at people for not realizing that maybe they should have changed their withholdings when it was the Trump administration that provided guidance as to what those withholding rates should be. And Fox News is having a great grand old time just laughing at people saying, stupid them, they should have figured that out. But a lot of people who are complaining about smaller refunds are not necessarily paying more in taxes, that it's that they've had less withheld during the year, and now they're going to have to either cut a check in some cases, or they are going to get a smaller refund. Now, the problem with that is that we can laugh at those people all we want, as Fox News decided to do, because they were apparently too dumb to figure that out for themselves. But for a lot of people, this is an economic problem, right? If you, for example, had 50 fewer dollars withheld during the year every single month, a total of 600, and that was your tax refund last year, and now you get no refund, that can actually be an economic calamity for a lot of people because, as we know, something like half of the country doesn't even have the ability to deal with an unexpected $400 expense. That's a real emergency. I don't think it's actually something to laugh at. I am in the privileged position, I will admit, that as the host of the David Pakman Show, I earn a salary during the year and I pay withholdings. But as one of the owners of the business that is the David Pakman Show, at the end of the year, I get a distribution if we make money. And so if I end up having to, as a result of those changed withholdings, cut a check to the IRS when I file my taxes, which, by the way, my accountant says is increasingly likely I'm going to have to do, I just got that distribution as an owner of the business, and I'm going to be able to do that because I've got the salary and the ownership. Most people don't do that. Most people just work for a living. And so when they hear that there's a new tax plan, so to speak, and they see that they've got an extra 50 or 60 bucks a month that they are getting, that doesn't tell them necessarily that they're actually going to owe less in taxes. It's just a change in withholdings. They may have to cut a check that they can't afford. And the most important thing to remember about that is that it's bad for the economy, okay? Because that is money that people are not going to have to put into businesses, local businesses, to put into their local economy. And it's money that they are no longer going to be able to spend because they've now got to cut a check to the IRS. So none of this is funny. And I do recognize the irony of people who were sort of too ignorant to understand the real implications of a tax reform plan that they thought they liked, now coming back and saying, where did my refund go? I get the irony, but it's bad for the economy. And even if those are Trumpists, I still feel bad for them. Now, where I stop feeling bad is if they decide to vote for the guy again, despite the destructive impact that he may have had on people as a result of that tax plan. But that's sort of a different story for a different day. So I was tweeting yesterday with a bunch of different people after seeing Donald Trump Jr. make this point on Twitter that your refund doesn't tell you how much tax you paid. That's, of course, completely true. It's just completely ridiculous that at this point in time, once it's all been said and done, and whatever PR benefit there was to 30 extra bucks in people's paychecks has been undone by the reality that that's money that's just coming out of people's refunds. Now seeing the inner circle of Trump going around and saying, hey, listen, you should actually look at your total tax due, not at your refund. It's ironic because that's what Democrats have been saying since January of 2018. January 2018, Democrats said, you should be careful about assuming that because you have less money being withheld each month, that necessarily correlates to a decrease in your tax due, because the Trump administration calculated an advantageous set of withholding tables so that the media reports would be, hey, everybody's got more money in their paychecks, myself included, but only when you file your taxes for the first time will you actually know the real impact of that. And that is a very, very different story. Okay, let me get to some of the super chats that are starting to come in. Super chat, of course, is the $ at the bottom of the chat window. If you have questions for me, if you have comments you want me to react to, using that $ is the way to go. I will mention just one more time that I will open up the phone lines if we get 10 new members during the live stream. Okay, I don't have all night, but if we do get 10 new members relatively soon, I'll open up the phone lines. There's 2 coupon codes available. The best coupon code, I think, is the birthday code, the Save 35 code. We launched this on February 2nd, which was the day of my birthday. If you apply the coupon code Save 35 to the $60 a year membership, it will drop your membership from $60 a year to $25 a year. Okay, this is an extraordinarily good deal. Membership is well priced at the normal prices. And with a $35 discount, it's an extra good time to sign up. So when you go to the website, davidpakman.com/membership, select the $60 per year membership. And then on the second page of the sign up process, put in the coupon code SAVE35. It'll drop the cost of your membership from $60 to just $25 a year. 10 new members, and I will open up the phone lines at 617-830-4750. We have one new member so far, Charles Cohn, who signed up using the coupon code. 9 more, and I will indeed open up the phone lines. And when the phone lines get opened, there are no call screeners. Trolls can get on, people who want to confront me about how I'm so wrong about this or that political issue. Everybody can do it. All right. So I look forward to doing that if indeed people want me to. Okay, let's see what we've got as far as super chats here. Blackwave54 sent a 99-cent super chat with no question or comment. Thank you. I appreciate it. The Progressive Voice sent a $1.99 super chat asking, what's my favorite TV show? Is it Big Bang Theory? No, I don't think I've ever watched a full episode of Big Bang Theory. I basically don't watch comedies. I find myself bored by most comedies. I think the last comedy show I watched with any regularity was Curb Your Enthusiasm, actually. And let's see, what other show am I watching now? I'm watching Travelers. Ben Dixon, host of the Benjamin Dixon Show, got me into Travelers. I'm on season 3 of Travelers. Just finished up season 3 of Man in the High Castle, the Amazon original. Excellent, excellent show. What else? I'm sort of anxiously waiting for the next season of Better Call Saul and of Mr. Robot. Those are shows I like. Yeah, those are a few. I guess the ones that come to mind. Paul Kyoko sends a $2 super chat. No question or comment. Thank you. Alex Andevin sends a $2 super chat asking, taxing the churches and their business creates how much? Yeah, I saw some figures recently, Alex, about potentially the amount of money that could be generated as government revenue if we were to stop tax exemptions for religious organizations, or even just for some religious organizations. And I don't remember exactly what that number is, but it's a lot. There's a lot of money there kind of hanging in the balance. Paul Kyoko says, can you address Hauser's Law in taxation? Let me remind myself what Hauser's Law is. I actually forgot. That's not the Laffer curve. Okay, Hauser's Law. Hauser's Law is actually, let's see if I can actually even maybe pull this up on screen and we can all look at it together. Hauser's Law. Okay, here we go. Hauser's Law is the proposition that in the United States, federal tax revenues since World War II have always been approximately equal to 19.5% of GDP, regardless of wide fluctuations in the marginal tax rate. Historically, since the end of World War II, federal tax receipts as a percentage of GDP averaged 17.9%, with a range from 14.4 to 20.9% between 1946 and 2007. Here's a chart. And indeed, here's the problem with this. So there's this graph is an example of one of the main ways that statistics can appear sort of deceptive. So this looks like, wow, look, federal tax receipts, we have all sorts of different tax reform, marginal tax rates are changed, but tax receipts are still in this very, very narrow range. What you have to understand here is that this y-axis is such that it appears as though these are relatively insignificant changes. But when you actually consider the difference between, if we go back to the numbers, the difference between 20.9% and 14.4% is almost 50%. So this is a law that seeks to assert that no matter what happens with tax law, actual receipts as a percentage of a GDP don't vary much. But that's only because of how this chart is truncated or expanded in this particular case. And you're talking about 50% variations. And for an entity the size of the United States, the difference between 14.4 and 20.9% is actually huge. So I'm just unsure about the significance of Hauser's law, and what sort of point they're trying to make, because that is a huge, huge, huge variability. Okay, a couple of other new members I want to thank. Jacob Lee has signed up at davidpakman.com/membership using the coupon code SAVE35. SAVE35 is a beautiful thing. It drops a $60 membership to only 25 bucks. And if we get 10 new signups during the stream, I will open up the phone lines. I see a lot of people in the regular chat who are mad at me about my comments about Ilhan Omar. I am glad to answer questions about that if we do indeed open up the phone lines. But we are only 20% of the way there. We're looking for 10 new members. And if we get that, I will open up the phone lines. Okay, the Progressive Voice back in there with a $1.99 super chat, asking, what are some things you do in your spare time? I play drums. I read a ton. I play chess. I travel. What else do I do? I go to the gym. A lot of David Pakman Show viewers, by the way, at my gym. It's now it's becoming a thing where I've met a whole bunch of people there who, I'm trying to work on my lats, and people are talking to me about the State of the Union or whatever. But yeah, I go to the gym as well. Okay, Platypi with underscores sends a $2 Australian super chat. Would the USA ever swap to ranked choice voting? I would love it. And I know that every time this comes up, some people, the concern trolls, will say, but David, what about ranked choice voting possibly giving a victory to a candidate who wasn't anyone's first choice? That's been dealt with. There are a bunch of models for instant runoff voting which prevent that from happening. I think that the forces that control how our system works don't want ranked choice voting because it's one of the main ways, along with campaign finance reform, for third-party candidates to become relevant and to potentially gain more power. So I would like to think that ranked choice voting is possible, but the establishment doesn't want it to. Sean Geese said, or Geis, with a $5 super chat, biggest super chat of the evening. Fox News polls showed that a majority of their viewers want higher taxes on $1 million earners and higher. Why do they vote Republican or against their interests then? We've talked about this for a very long time. There are sort of first order and second order and third order issues in terms of what are voting issues. And that is something that for a long time has led to people not voting for their own best interests because of sort of higher moral priorities. I've been reading Jonathan Haidt's book. What is it now? I forget the name of it. I think it's The Rational Mind. And he talks about a lot of the research that shows that a lot of the reasons we claim to support or oppose a policy, we believe that it is from a sort of rational reasoning, logical reasoning perspective that we have decided that we are for or against or supporting a certain candidate or policy. But that increasingly what the research shows us is that when people hear about abortion, when people hear about tax the rich or whatever, there's an initial reaction that is based more on passion and gut. And we are then finding post hoc rationalizations. And I think that that plays a big role in why a lot of people are voting one way, but then claiming to support policies that we would imagine would lead them to make different decisions at the ballot box. Jacob Lee, also a YouTube channel member. Jacob is now 2/3 of the new members during the stream. This is sort of, it's pathetic how poorly it's going today. But Jacob now, I think we have to count that twice. We're looking for 10 new members. Jacob is both a new website member and a new YouTube member. And in addition to Charles Cohn, that is now 3 of 10. And if indeed we get to 10 new members during the stream, I'll open up the phone lines. And I see a lot in the chat, people angry with me about AIPAC and Ilhan Omar and all sorts of other stuff. I'm glad to talk about all of that once we open up the phone lines, and you can call in and call me out on it. I'm ready. Okay, let's see here. What other super chats do we have? Elias Hackinson with a 50 Swedish kroner super chat. How much is that in US dollars? I don't know offhand. Is it like $5 maybe? Elias says, what's a policy prescription that would do a lot of good that nobody's talking about? My vote is slashing not in my backyard regulations. A very small financial transaction, a speculative financial transaction tax would do a lot of good. And we know from very good research that has been done that a lot of the Wall Street speculation that goes on is of no societal or economic benefit. It's not like, for example, going to the local what's a nice quaint and archaic example. It's not like going to the local metalsmith and having them make you an oven or something like that, where you are funding the labor of the metalsmith, and then the metalsmith can then go and take that money and spend it at the local grocery store, and it has this multiplier effect, as it's called in economics. A lot of the particularly derivative and other more speculative financial instruments, the money that is generated there, it is generating money in a sense, and people are making a lot of money from it, but it's not providing any kind of a broader economic benefit. Putting a small transaction tax on those mechanisms that are more speculative would have a would be a huge benefit to the economy at large. Let me say thank you to Alex Beard. Alex Beard has signed up at davidpakman.com/membership. Alex used the code SAVE35, which means that Alex got a $60 membership for just $25. And that means that we are now at 4 out of 10. We are now just 6 new members away from me saying we are opening up the phone lines. And I'm excited. It seems like a lot of anger in the chat, and I'm glad to hear from people. Okay, Jacob Lee with a $10 super chat. Yes, unfortunately, I'm from that Lee family, the one that founded and then disgraced the country thereafter. Hoping I can eventually enter politics from Oklahoma and change the state to progressive. Is Jacob saying that he's part of Robert E. Lee, Civil War General Robert E. Lee's family? That may be what he's saying. I can't think of any other family that is not last named Lee that we would think of as that Lee family. But I appreciate the support, Jacob. Thank you. Sean Geese or Sean Geis, I'm a big reader myself. Any authors you recommend? Yeah, I mean, I should do an entire podcast just about books someday, but it'll get 100 downloads and it'll have been, maybe an exercise in futility. But right now, I mean, I'll just tell you what I'm reading right now. For nonfiction right now, I just finished Haruki Murakami's book, Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World. The book's actually from 1985. It was translated in the early 90s by Alfred Birnbaum, and I just finished it. Very, very good book. I am now reading one of Eric Ambler's books that he wrote under a pen name. Eric Ambler is one of my absolute favorite authors in the sort of genre of Jean Le Carre and Raymond Chandler and all of those. Anything by Eric Ambler, I recommend that you read. And then I just got Elliot Pepper's novel that has not even been released yet. Elliot Pepper writes really, really good, sort of like, I don't want to be offensive, and we follow each other on Twitter, and I hate mischaracterizing authors' books, but I consider them sort of techno thrillers. And I recently read Borderless and Bandwidth by Elliot Pepper, and the new one is Breach. It's not even released yet, but he was kind enough to send me a pre-release copy. So those are the 3 fiction books that I've just read and I'm reading. Nonfiction, right now I'm reading Escape from Camp 14, which just a Twitter follower recommended to me. Last week, I tweeted, what good nonfiction book should I read? Someone recommended Escape from Camp 14, which is the now known to be not totally accurate story of a North Korean work camp prisoner's escape. And I'm almost done with it. It's a total page turner and really, really interesting. And as I mentioned, I'm also reading Jonathan Haidt's book, The Rational Mind, or The Rational Brain, I believe it's called. It's a little bit older now, but very good. That's just a little bit. I could go on all day about what I'm reading. Okay, let's see where we are. We've got a couple more members. So Justin Valcourt is a new $2 a month patron. We are counting patrons towards our goal of 10 supporters to open the phone lines. That gets us to number 5. And Mark Everett has signed up on our website with the coupon code SAVE35. Mark just got a delightful $60 membership for only $25 because he used the code SAVE35. That is 6. So we are 60% of the way to opening the phone lines at 617-830-4750. Keep them coming. Okay, Platypie is back saying, I just got back to Australia from my first US trip, and I'm currently working on a video about my experience. I'm hoping to get feedback from you once completed, please. Yeah, I have a lot of requests all the time for people who want to just get my feedback on a video. There's limited time, but feel free to email it to me when you have it, and I'll make every effort to check it out. Elias Hackinson is back saying, well, my day trading just got you 100 Swedish kroner. How much is that? Let's see if I can figure that out. SEK to USD. That's actually confusing. USD to SEK is a better way to do it. Okay, so it's 9.27 Swedish krona is $1. So that's about $10. Thank you, Elias. I appreciate that. What can I say? Skal Krog says, is it bad for your watch time if I watch your videos and fast forward? I like you so much better in fast forward. That's a really good question. So watch time is a big indicator on YouTube. It's not just views that matter, but it's what percentage of your videos are people watching and how many minutes of video are people watching. My understanding is that if I have a 10-minute video and you watch it at 2x speed, meaning it only takes you 5 minutes to watch it, I believe that still counts as 10 minutes of watch time. So no, speed me up. I don't mind at all. Keith Clem with a $5 super chat says, no question, just moved by all the haters posting, don't give this ad hominem of choice more money. And 3,492 Hatriots cry. Are people saying that in the chat? Let me see here. Are people actually saying, let's scroll up a little bit. Maybe I can make this bigger and we can take a look at it together just briefly. Are people saying not to give me money? Hop off, my boy, progressive. So people are angry with Progressive Voice. David, give a shout out to your new patron, Benjamin Netanyahu. Can't imagine he'd give me money. I've been arguing against him for years at this point. What else? Trump is really black. He's wearing whiteface. Yeah, I'm not seeing people saying not to give me money here, but David, do you use bots? I don't even know for what. But what would we even use bots for? for posting tweets, or I don't know. Yes, Robert E. Lee. Interesting. Okay. A Robert E. Lee family member is in the audience. David has the personality of a bicycle seat. Yeah, if I notice someone, it's probably because you're being really annoying. And I saw that Larry Cooper was posting stuff before we even started. If this entire endeavor is just so bad for you, Larry, I don't even know why you're here. Saul Cruz challenges me to a chess match. I would do that. I'm David Pakman on Lee Chess, and I would play. But I think we're kind of working towards opening up the phone lines. So I don't know if the audience really wants to see that today. Okay, let me sort of shrink the chat a little bit more here again. And let me say thank you to, okay, so Jacob Lee is now triple threat. Jacob has signed up for a YouTube channel membership, for a website membership, and on Patreon. Jacob is now a $5 a month patron at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. That's 7 out of 10. We're looking for 10 new members or supporters of any kind, and I'll open up the phone lines at 617-830-4750. I have the phone line ready to go, but I have to wait. If I say we need 10 subscribers, I need to wait. Otherwise, what's the point of the entire thing? Okay, Platypie says that they will make their video 3 minutes long just for me so that I will review it. Okay, I think that's fair. That's a fair trade. Sabrina Zafar says, who or what are your inspirations and influences? I don't know if it's my lack of sentimentality or what. but I couldn't tell you. I don't, my inspirations and influences, I feel like I need to have some kind of set PR friendly answer to that question because it's been asked before and I never have a good answer. I don't know. The people of the world are my inspiration, Sabrina. I met Sabrina, by the way, at Politicon. I believe this is Sabrina from Boston College, who I met in person at Politicon in a scrum of all sorts of people who had questions and met some Argentinians at Politicon. I think that's the same Sabrina. Thanks, Sabrina. Good to see you here. Jacob Lee says, hey, David Pakman Show. Yes, I am from a branch that dates back to the sibling of Henry Lighthorse Lee. I don't know who that is, but I assume that that connects to Robert E. Lee, and it's the same family. Very interesting. Joshua Carr, Josh, it's been a while since I've heard from you. Good to see you in the chat. $20 super chat. That's the top super chat of the evening. Joshua says, David, always good to have the sane voice on YouTube. No question. Keep up the good work. I'll also sign up for a YouTube membership. Let's get to 10 and open up the phone lines. And indeed, Joshua, immediately signing up for a YouTube subscription. That gets us to 8. Did I skip 7? No, I think we were at 7 and now we are at 8. 80% of the way there. If we get 2 more new members, patrons, YouTube channel members, I will open up the phone lines at 617-830-4750. And from what people are just on fire in the chat, wanting to talk to me about all sorts of stuff. People saying Israel is an illegitimate state. I think that is a losing argument for anybody who wants Israeli policy to change. You are not going to win that one. Hassan JF was really looking forward to seeing Kyle and I debate Ben Shapiro, Charlie Kirk, or Candace Owens at Politicon if they didn't chicken out. Yeah, I don't even know if they did chicken out. At this point, Politicon was so poorly organized that when they said that some of those individuals are opting not to participate, it's not even clear to me that they were actually pitched those debates. I think that in some cases, they just never responded to Politicon. I don't know if Candace Owens is playing coy with it, but she tweeted to one of my followers recently, who is David Parkman, when they said, why didn't you debate David? And that may be true. That she might be playing dumb, or that may be true. She may have no idea who I am. So I don't know what the truth is of any of that stuff. Okay, the Progressive Voice is in the super chat with a $1.99 super chat. What was the backstory of the Instagram picture with Kyle? I presume he means Kulinski in Los Angeles. I don't remember the picture exactly. I remember posting a picture with Kyle just hanging out at Politicon. I don't think there was backstory. It was just, let's post a picture and see what happens. And from what I recall, it did really well. If you want to see the picture that the Progressive Voice is talking about, follow me on Instagram at david.pakman. And by the way, I just want to let people know, let me see if it's still going on here. On the show Instagram account, which is David Pakman Show, I've been taking questions throughout the day. I do this like every other Wednesday. And it is still there. So if you have any questions for me that maybe I would answer, you can follow David Pakman Show on Instagram and post them there. Jacob Lee says, yes, Henry Lighthouse Lee was the father of Robert E. Lee. So my branch diverged slightly before his existence. Very, very interesting. And appreciate the support and all the super chats, Jacob. We have a new patron, Alex Beard, who also signed up for membership tonight. That gets us to 9 new supporters during the stream. We're almost there. Do people want me to open up the phone lines? If people do, I will. But we need just one new either website subscriber, patron, or YouTube channel member, which you can do by using the join button. I think it's down there below the live stream. And then we will go ahead and get the phone lines opened. Okay, I was just taking a scan through the chat here. People want the phone lines open. Here's an example. You see Jacob Lee now has this cool David Pakman Show logo whenever he participates in the chat. That's one of the um, benefits conferred by membership. People talking about abolishing Jewish supremacy, and just people are obsessed with Jews. It's really weird. I was actually talking. This is kind of interesting. I was talking to someone the other day, and we were talking about anti-Semitism and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and this sort of stuff. And they pointed out something that is really sort of notable, I guess we would say, about anti-Semitism, which is that it goes beyond some of the particular characterizations of other minority groups that lead to discrimination and prejudice. So, like, for example, there's the stereotype that exists. A lot of people are like angry with Hispanic people because they're, quote, taking our jobs, or they are, quote, leeching off welfare. How the same people that are taking your job are getting welfare despite working doesn't really make sense. They conflict, but that's like one meme that you see out there. You see with Black people, you see the so-called crime realists who say, hey, Black people are inherently criminals, and that's the problem with Black people. With Jews, it's often these sort of just like amorphous ideas of Jewish supremacy and conspiracies about the protocols of the elders of Zion and all this stuff. It goes beyond even, not that any of the reasons people dislike Hispanic people or Black people or whoever make sense, but at least they have an internal logic that there's like a specific reason people are citing. A lot of the anti-Semitism, like some of these posts that we're seeing, even depressingly on our chat, are just so vague. It's stop Jewish supremacy. What does that even mean? Give me a break. Okay, we're going to open up the phone lines. And the reason that we're going to do that is that we have all sorts of new supporters and patrons and stuff like that that I'm going to thank right now. So I am opening up the phone lines now at 617-830-4750. But before you can start queuing, as people like to say, mostly the British, I think. But I want to thank Deacon UCLA, who is a new member, DeBarnu, who is a new member, Heath Cooper is a new member, Jared is a new patron, and I think that is it. Yeah, I believe that is it. So I'm going to go over to the phone lines and see what people have on their minds. 617-830-4750. I am getting on the line here. Let's see here. Okay, and a lot of people holding already. Let's see. Let's go first just because international is interesting and it could be very late where this person is calling from. I'm going to go first to the caller from country code 49. What country code is 49?
Hello?
Yeah, that's you. Where are you calling from?
I'm Marcello. I'm calling from Germany. I called again. I called a few weeks ago, but now I'm here again.
Thank you. What's going on?
Great fan of your show. I was the question I have today is more economically about Argentina, which is also your home country, if I remember right.
Yes.
Why is it that Argentina struggles so much with inflation and other connected problems with the economy, regardless of the government, if it is rather right-winged or left-winged? It seems that this is a consistent problem, but could you explain?
Yeah, it's very, I mean, this requires like 30 years of history to look at, but there's a long history of outrageous inflation. It happens during left-wing and during centrist administrations in Argentina. There were missteps with the currency. For a while, the peso was pegged 1-to-1 to the dollar. That was a train wreck. Now there has been this massive devaluation. There have been missteps with the soy industry in Argentina. I mean, it's like, it would take so long to explain, but it's the vulture loans are also a problem. It's a mess down there, and I feel really bad because a lot of my family is dealing with it every single day.
But have you any idea what to do to change this situation? Or
No, No,
going to.
unfortunately, most of the suggestions that I read are only partially getting at the heart of the issues and also very difficult to implement politically, particularly with the degree of corruption that many recent administrations in Argentina have had. So I unfortunately don't know what the best plan is, and that's not a good thing at all.
Oh, that's very depressing to hear. But
Yes.
thank you anyway.
It's extraordinarily depressing. Yeah. Great to hear from you. Appreciate the call. I'm going to let you go because I've got a bunch of people here holding. Okay, let's see. Let's go to the 267 area code. Caller from 267. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Is that me?
Yeah, that's you.
Hi, David. My name is Sean Geis. I'm from Jamison, Pennsylvania, but I'm originally from Philadelphia.
Cool. Okay, so your last name is pronounced Geis.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
All
don't
right,
worry
good.
about geese. I've been hearing that since second grade. Don't worry
Okay.
about it.
What's
Anybody
going
who
on?
first talked to me. So I have a question. I thought about this the other day, and I noticed that if you, I'm sure, I mean, everybody pays attention to Donald Trump's Twitter feed, and he's able to call out, people even on the stupidest things like calling, Chuck Todd, sleepy-eyed Chuck,
Yep.
calling out, like Hillary Clinton all the time during the 2016 election. So you know who he's able to point out, and insult on Twitter. But I noticed that he doesn't really insult Bernie Sanders. The only thing he ever really said with Bernie Sanders was, even if he's in a wheelchair, I'll have an election with him or something like that. And I'm thinking, does he not go after Bernie Sanders because he sort of knows that there are voters of his in places like the Rust Belt who would have voted for Bernie if it was Bernie versus Trump?
I don't think so.
Because
No, I don't think so. And the reason why is I don't think that it's true that he, the whole crazy Bernie thing was a thing for a while. All of Bernie's ideas are crazy. And I think he has even said, even if it had been Bernie, I still would have crushed him. So I've not seen Trump shying away from criticizing Bernie the way you're suggesting.
Okay, yeah, but I think it's just even when but I'm also talking about like if you hear him, like Bernie during MLK Day, during the speech, blatantly called out, Donald Trump a racist, and, any other people were talking. Because I noticed the same also with AOC. He hasn't come out on Twitter and said specifically anything about AOC.
Yeah,
I just sort
that
of have a
actually,
theory
that's
that
more interesting. I'm more interested in that because that one is more of a question mark to me. But with the Bernie one, I mean, listen, we'll know for sure if Bernie declares that he's running, and we'll see whether or not Trump is afraid of criticizing him publicly. But so far, I'm more interested in why he hasn't been critical of AOC rather than Bernie, because I think he has been critical of Bernie.
I just think he's afraid of the immensely popular, like someone who seems to have more media coverage, more Twitter followers than he does, because of the pettiness of it.
That could be. That could be. I'll pay closer attention to it. Appreciate the call. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you.
Great. Okay, let's see who else we've got on the phone. Let's go to the 571 area code. Caller from 571. Who's there?
Hi, David. This is Alejandro from Colombia.
Hey, what's going on?
Good. I just want to hear your thoughts on Trump's comments on sending the military to Venezuela. We've been good allies with the States forever, and in the case of a military attack on Venezuela, he would surely send troops to Colombia and station them here. So I just want to know what you think about what he said, if he is serious about the threat.
I apologize. What did Trump say about troops in Venezuela? Is this something recent that I just haven't seen yet?
Well, you know that President Duque is now in the States. They have a meeting there. And he said that he was not discarding a military option in Venezuela. And in that case, he would send troops to station them in Colombia.
Got it. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm against that. The United States presence in Latin America has been an absolute and total disaster, and I would be against that. The only exception would be if indeed there is a defensive effort in coalition in Latin America and the U.S. is part of that coalition, then okay. But anything other than that, I would be I can't think of other circumstances under which I would be in favor of the U.S. getting involved militarily in Latin America.
I mean, everyone knows he's a madman.
Yes.
But do you think he would eventually follow through with this?
I think that he actually does have some people around him who recognize that the places where Trump has thought about sending the military are really a bad idea, and some would potentially be political suicide. So even though the guy is unhinged, I have some last optimism that there are people around him who just wouldn't allow him to do it.
All right. Okay, thank you then.
Okay, great. Great to hear from you. Thank you. Let's go to the 858 area code. Caller from 858. What's on your mind today? Hello. I heard you unmute 858. Are you there? 858 is gone. Okay. Let's see. Let's go to the 925 area code. Caller from 925. Who's there?
Hello?
Yeah, that's you.
Oh, okay, cool. Oh, my name is Stages. I'm a
Stages,
student, a
did
high
you
school
say?
student currently. Stages, Tejas.
Tejas. All right, I like that.
All
Isn't
right,
it just
so my
Texas, which
question,
is how you say Texas in Spanish?
yeah, kind of.
Oh, all right, cool.
So today I was actually wondering about the topic that you brought up with the taxes,
Okay.
and I was concerned. So I was really wondering about like AOC's 70% marginal tax rate, and I was wondering if that would really be effective as to how we're going to be able to tax the rich and get money out of them so that we can fund social welfare programs.
Okay.
But I mean, the thing is that lots of these rich people have very high incomes, but they also have they have very high net worths, but they have like low incomes, which is hard to tax. Like for example, Jeff Bezos, he earned $40 billion in net worth, but only had an income of like 80,000 in 2017.
Yep.
So what other effective methods could we use in order to, get more tax revenue for the government in order to fund safety net programs?
So there's two options, and I'm not assessing the popularity of these, but I'm just identifying two options. One possibility is doing some kind of a wealth tax, and Elizabeth Warren has put out a plan on that. The other possibility is changing the long-term capital gains rate so that passive income, the likes of which is often taxed at significantly lower rates than income tax rates, would be taxed at a higher rate. There's a proposal to raise from 15 to 20%, which is still quite reasonable and would still save people money versus earned income, which would raise a lot of money. So those are a couple of ideas that have been floated, which I think are reasonable. It's, the political viability remains to be seen.
Yeah. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for calling in. Good question. Appreciate it. Let's go next to the 240 area code. Caller from 240. Go ahead.
Hello, is that me?
Yeah, that's you.
So my name's Lucas.
So listen, something just clicked and now you sound like you're underwater. Did you plug in a Bluetooth headset or something?
Oh, sorry, I had the speaker on and then I missed that turn off.
Oh man, you're just fading. You're coming in and out. Let's do speaker off, headphones off, and see if we can get your question.
Is it better now?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's because I had my speaker on, because I'm doing my French homework right now.
Oh, all right. Well, if you're doing French homework, then I'll allow it.
So my question was actually about the Israel-Palestine issue right now.
Okay.
I was wondering what your take is on it and like just your general opinion about it.
About what specifically are you asking me?
Like, I myself, I don't think I'm very informed on the issue. Like, I just have a general background knowledge on the Israel-Palestine issue. Like, I know that Israel was created on the last day of the British mandate that they had over Palestine.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just wondering, like, the current, like, what possible solutions do you think there would be?
Well, I mean, listen, to go from the history to the solution, it's extraordinarily difficult, but I've laid out what my plan would be a couple of times in videos that go into some detail, and I would just encourage you to check those out. Some of the things that I think will need to happen are settlements which are illegal, obviously need to stop immediately, and a lot of them are going to need to be undone if there's going to be a peace deal. The blockade on Gaza is going to need to be opened, but there's going to need to be some kind of mechanism in there to ensure that if indeed weapon making supplies are continuing or start going back in, that something can be done. Control of the old city of Jerusalem is going to be a big point of contention. I believe that big picture, East Jerusalem is going to need to become a permanent part of the Palestinian territories or a state that is created in the future. But the Jewish quarter of the old city is going to need to remain under under Israeli control. I mean, none of these things are unique. It's just sort of eliminating non-starters and figuring out like, okay, what are just the basic things that are going to need to be there if there's going to be any progress on peace? And by the way, Netanyahu has to go and Hamas has to go. There's not going to be any serious progress here with Hamas in charge of Gaza, nor with Benjamin Netanyahu in charge of Israel.
Okay. I was just wondering because I have some friends who are from Israel, and a lot of arguments like that just spark at the dinner table and stuff like that.
Okay, good. Well, check out my videos on it. I appreciate the call. Great to hear from you. Let's go next to, where do we want to go? Let's go to the 512 area code. Caller from 512. And the number, by the way, for people asking is 617-830-4750. Caller from 512. What's going on?
Hello.
Yes.
This is Steve from
Hey, Steve.
Austin, Tejas. Love your show.
Thank you.
It's really good. The previous caller kind of teed me up here, I think, for what I'm going to say and what I'm going to ask you. I saw on one of your shows like an aside that you apparently don't approve of the BDS movement, boycott, divestment, sanctions on Israel.
It's not that I don't approve of
policies.
the movement. I mean, I'm fine with people choosing to do boycotts. I am not a supporter of it personally.
Well, I would just say this is the statement I would make, which I have written down. A combination of BDS outside Israel and a disciplined nonviolent action inside Israel and Palestine, I think is the only realistic way forward out of a totally gridlocked situation that's highly dangerous and lethal to world peace if it's left unresolved. I don't think it's stable for the long term. And I don't think targeting Israel in that way is about them being uniquely bad, at least as far as I'm concerned. Like some people will say, well, why not target China? Why not target Nepal, et cetera? It's anti-Semitic just to have this tactic. I just think
Who says those things though? Because you're sort of you're saying, who's saying it's anti-Semitic merely to talk about this?
I think many of the defenders of, the state of Israel, in some cases, and its defenders will say, why single out this nation alone among nations in the world as if they're somehow uniquely bad on their human rights record when there's so many more worse? And so,
okay, but hold on a second. Just hold on one second, because first you said it's wrong to say that merely having this conversation is anti-Semitic. But then when I asked you who's saying that, you said, well, some people are saying that it's wrong to single Israel out. But those are two different things. I said, who is saying that merely talking about this is anti-Semitic? Because I haven't seen that.
Well, honestly, I would preface a couple of things. My case here is, first off, I would say I am pro-Zionist in the sense that I believe Jewish nationalism is valid.
Okay.
And I believe the original Zionist movement was democratic in nature, and for Israel to remain that way, which I think is vital for its own survival, because no country can stand alone against the world. I think there's going to have to be this respect for human rights. But I also think it's human nature. Like, nobody's going to give up anything, any territory or any prerogatives without pressure. And so I think the BDS tactic gives nonviolent coercion an outlet for anger among Palestinians, and a way for people of goodwill who live in Israel, live around the world, can pressure nonviolently and effectively pressure.
I think I got it. Okay, but so to
the
cut
parties
to the,
get to the bargaining table. But I think the problem with the BDS
so here's the question.
movement.
Steve, you're going on. I think I get the point. You're going on and on and on. What would be so let's say a lot of, obviously, Israelis aren't going to boycott Israel because they live there. They go to Israeli grocery stores and they have Israeli phone service and all of that stuff. So people around the world boycott Israeli products, I guess. So, like, what happens next? How does it work? Who does it bring to the table? And in what way will it make them more willing to negotiate with whoever it is they're going to negotiate with?
Well, I had said a combination of BDS on the outside of the region and disciplined nonviolent action on the inside of the region. And I think the Palestinian authorities could discipline the nonviolent action. I think they could do that. And so I think that's the only way forward, because
Steve, you're saying Hamas would be maybe the
Palestinian Authority. The Palestinian Authority.
Got it. In the West Bank. Yep.
Yeah. And I think, it's like, no, Hamas is, well, I don't know. Maybe I live here. I don't live there. So maybe it's arrogant of me to say, but I just, from reading this stuff and looking at things, it looks to me like you don't give up anything unless it's under duress. Normally, human beings don't. Yet, if the other side is using violence against you, well, then you don't want to reward the violence. And so, in a time of calm, Israel never bargains. And then in a time of frenzy, they really don't want to bargain, because it would be rewarding violence. And then when Israel arguably is preemptively given up some territory for, preemptively, I guess for strategic reasons, like southern Lebanon and Gaza, well, sure enough, the other side says, well, that's because we were violent and it worked, so let's amplify our violence. And I just think it's a really dangerous situation. So
yeah, it is. Okay, Steve, I got it. I think I get the position.
It is a better way to go.
Yeah, I just think, it's at this point there might be something we could point to that has been achieved by it, and other than some resolutions where some places are like, we're not going to do business with Israel, I just don't see it getting us anywhere closer to where I want to be, which is serious peace talks. The other thing I would also mention is, there's a if you're really going to do it, you've got to do it. And if you're going to boycott Israel, then it's got to include all medical devices from Israel. It has to include, the intellectual property and medical treatments that have been developed there. And nobody's really willing to do that I've seen, when those are the superior things. So you also need to be able to be consistent and really do it. Not just like, I'm not going to buy SodaStream, I'll get Poland Spring seltzer water, but when it comes to other things, I'm totally fine,
Well, I guess cultural boycotts are problematic. I do feel squeamish about that. Like there should be cultural contact between Israel and the rest of the world. But I'm just
and there's
thinking,
going to continue to be. I don't think that there's any risk that will change. All right, Steve, I'm going to let you go. I've got just a ton of people holding here, and let's see. All right, let's go to Alex. Alex is on, and I've got a note here that Alex's calls are sometimes interesting. What's on your mind today, Alex?
Hi, David.
Hey, what's up?
Thanks for taking my call.
Thank you.
Hey, so in the previous call I made, you brought up the concept of externalities, which is another debate. And I wanted to ask...
Hold on, what's the debate about externalities, whether they exist?
The debate about pricing things according to negative externalities.
Okay.
And my question is, if it were 1000 BC, would you price like fire according to externalities, like firewood, because it causes smoke, which can cause respiratory diseases? And would you price it according to that?
Why does it need to be 1000 BC? Doesn't firewood also cause those problems today?
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't need to be 1000 BC,
Oh.
but that's just a hypothetical example.
I don't know how I would price firewood. I'm not sure why. What's the broader point, I guess, that you're trying to make?
I'm trying to make the point that externalities are just kind of an arbitrary, worthless concept.
Well, hold on. So those are two different. Arbitrary is one thing, and worthless is a different one. I think that arbitrary. I mean, listen, arbitrary. You may not be able to get 100% accuracy in assessing externalities, but to say that they're arbitrary, I don't think is right. We might just have a hard time being exactly accurate. You know what I mean?
Right.
Okay. So arbitrary, I don't think is the right term.
Okay. Well,
so then let's go to worthless.
We can't really get an accurate.
Worthless.
You're saying we can't get an accurate.
We can get pretty close, though. Okay, so like I don't think that's really a good argument. Now, worthless is an interesting one. I mean, here's the value I see in being aware of externalities. Imagine that we have two competing, we have two competing meat proteins that we can eat. They both are equally tasty. They confer the same amount of protein and fat and cholesterol and whatever else. They're the same in every way, except one of them requires way more, water or transportation. It comes from further away, so it's releasing more pollution into the atmosphere. Whether we are 100% right in assessing exactly what the cost of that externality is, wouldn't you say that it's not worthless? Like, that's a relevant thing to think about. If I'm completely neutral in terms of taste and health value between two meat proteins, and one is worse for the environment, that seems worthwhile to me, doesn't it?
Well, it's not really how prices work. I mean, if for that example.
No, but hold on a second. That's a different argument. The question that I have is, in what way would it be worthless to consider the externalities? That's what you first alleged. You said it's worthless.
Okay. Well, explain to me how they're worth something.
Because if I'm indifferent, if we ignore the externalities and we just say, here's two types of meat protein, here's how they taste, and here's how many grams of protein they have, not having the additional information that there is an environmental cost that is greater for one of those than not the other, I now have incomplete information. I'm making a more informed decision, and one that accounts for the negative externalities in a way that's better for the planet by knowing that one of these proteins is much worse for the environment. That seems relevant. That is a value.
Right, but how prices work is it would be priced higher because more transportation would be involved in that.
That is only if you are talking in an actual free market where those externalities are borne by the producer and paid for by the consumer. You're right in a sense, but the problem is that in the economic system that we have, a lot of those externalities are socialized, and it ends up being paid for by taxpayers, and that's where it becomes problematic.
What do you mean paid for by taxpayers?
So, for example, a company that is a for-profit company and they do fracking, for example, right, in North Carolina. I think this is an example from 6 months ago. If you account for the frequency with which there is an accident, which requires significant spending in order to do the cleanup, if that is accounted for and that cost is borne by the company, that would be one scenario. But what ends up happening is that the cleanup cost ends up being borne by the taxpayers through state agencies that then have to go and clean up the disaster. So only if that externality is borne by the for-profit company would the perfect pricing mechanism you described actually function. But if it's the taxpayers who are paying for the cleanup, if the profit is for the corporation and the cleanup costs are socialized among taxpayers, the pricing theory you mentioned doesn't hold true.
Okay. Well, that's how prices work, though.
What I'm telling you is it's not. What I'm telling you is it's not. The way prices would work in a free market where negative externalities are actually priced in is what you're describing, but that's just not the real world.
Right, but in that case, that would be,
right. Okay.
I guess, a rights violation. And say if I punch you in the face, is that an externality? No, it's a rights violation.
How does that have anything to do with what we're talking about? Listen, Alex, I'm going to let you go. I appreciate that you didn't interrupt me almost at all during today's call, but I think we've gotten sort of as far as we can here. Okay, let me say thanks to Sully Divad, who has signed up for a membership at davidpakman.com/membership. Let's check in with a couple of other people. Let's go to the 518 area code. Caller from 518. Who's there?
Hey, David, it's Adam in Albany.
Hey, Adam, what's going on?
I guess my question is, I've noticed that with George Bush Jr., there's been a lot of speculation that most of his presidency was sort of dictated by his vice president, Dick Cheney. And now with Trump, it seems like that might also be a similar situation developing there. Do you think this is going to be a recurring pattern going forward for the GOP, where the face of the presidency is sort of like the good old boy, and the vice president sort of handles all of the internal affairs of state?
You know, I'm not convinced that Mike Pence is in charge right now. I mean, first of all, so I would say two things about that I would kind of want to follow up on. One is, I think if Pence were actually in charge, Trump wouldn't have done half of the stupid stuff that he's done, because Pence recognizes that a lot of the things he does are really, really dumb. But more importantly, it doesn't suit Trump's personality to be manipulated by Pence. He's much more the type of guy who would be manipulated in a less obvious way, like, for example, via a 30-year relationship with Russia. But putting that aside, like, what specific thing has Trump done that strikes you more as like Pence is doing than Trump's doing?
Well, honestly, it seems like he hasn't done much himself, which is why it leads me to believe that perhaps Pence is doing like actual work behind the scenes, because a lot of the proposals Trump has put forth have just really fallen on their face.
But okay, so like, what's an example of something Pence got done?
You know what? You might be right about that. I don't really, nothing really comes to mind immediately.
It's not a gotcha. I mean, I'm open to what you're saying. I'm just trying to think, like, what are I mean, we you know, the Republican House, before they lost control of it, was putting through a bunch of stuff. And we reported on a lot of it. I just don't know that Pence was that involved. I feel like Pence is steering clear and just kind of letting this disaster happen.
You might be right about that, actually.
All right. Appreciate the call. Thank you. I'll think about that more and follow up. Let's see here. Let's go to the 718 area code. Is 718 Brooklyn or Boston? I never remember. 718, are you there?
Hello, David?
Yep. Yes.
I didn't think I would actually get picked up on for this. I'm calling from Queens, New York City.
Oh, apologies for the Brooklyn comment then.
What?
Nothing. I said I thought 718 was Brooklyn, but it's Queens. And if that's offensive,
kind of like
I apologize.
all the outer boroughs no one cares about in New York City.
Yeah.
Anyway, I was calling because me and a lot of the audience were not happy with your coverage of the Ilhan Omar situation.
Okay.
I don't particularly have my own solution for what I want to do with Israel.
Okay.
I would like them not do human rights violations on Palestine.
Good.
And I would like Hamas to stop exploding things. That's what I would like there. But
good.
I feel like I'm very bothered by AIPAC's influence, and it's not just them, it's other PACs. But what I was concerned about was the Ilhan Omar coverage.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't feel she said anything anti-Semitic.
Right, and I said that too. I also said it. Did you? I want to make sure you remember that in the segment, I also said I wasn't alleging that she said something anti-Semitic, right? So we're all on the same page.
Yeah,
there.
but you talked about anti-Semitic tropes.
That's right, I did.
I mean, could you be a little more specific? Like, what? How did she say something that could be I know what you're talking about with I guess dog whistle type deals, but I didn't see that? Like, what specific like phrases?
Well, I mean, listen,
see
I
that?
already did the entire segment yesterday or the day before. You didn't agree with it. Now you're basically just asking me to repeat. So here's the question I have for you, because I actually am super interested in this. What should my response be as the host of the show when there is negative feedback to a segment that I do? Like I've gotten, some tweets from people, and I've seen messages in the chat from people saying, "Hey, we don't like what you said about Ilhan Omar." So like, what should I do about that? What would you advise me to do about that?
But like, I perhaps I phrased this poorly. I'm sorry about that. I'm not trying to attack you for the segment. I just
Right. No, I understand.
I watched the segment twice. I just
Mhm.
didn't like. I couldn't see what you were really pointing to. But I guess my more of an actual question for why I called is like, if not BDS. Now I agree with what you said earlier that Hamas and Netanyahu are both issues that are stopping negotiation. But
Yeah.
let's say you were Donald Trump right now. How would you try to get Israel and Palestine, whoever may be in charge, to the negotiating table, if not
I don't think
BDS?
that the current players are the right players to negotiate, and Trump is the exact wrong person to do it. So like by the way, it's not even totally
Yeah, I
clear
don't
to
want
me
Trump
that
to do
it's
it,
the
but I'm saying,
responsibility of an American president to be super involved in those negotiations. I mean, historically, there have been American presidents and other political players who were well suited to the task. And if both the Israeli and Palestinian sides are open to having the participation of someone from the US, fine. But I also think we should be challenging the idea that it's up to the American president to negotiate. Do you see what I'm saying?
yeah, I know what you're saying. It really shouldn't have been our situation, but I looked at it like it was kind of we got involved and we're just kind of like we give a lot of support to Israel, so we're just kind of chained to it, I guess would be the way I would phrase it.
Well, I mean, would
So
you
if
would you
not,
apply that same standard to any country we give aid to? Like, are we particularly chained to, I don't know, pick your country?
I guess I could. Like, you could say that we're chained to, like, Japan because we still have the agreement that we have a military base there. We, I guess, air quotes, protect them. We still have the countries in NATO, but I guess where it would be like, what would you do from America? What would you want America to do in that situation? Would you try to just send in aid?
I would try to start eking
food, water,
out.
medicine?
I would try
What?
to listen. While it's Netanyahu and Hamas, I don't know that you're really going to make any significant progress, because Netanyahu doesn't want peace and Hamas doesn't want peace. So if you don't have willing participants, you're not going to get anywhere. But let's assume for a second that I was in a position to actually have some influence. I would try to negotiate individually, to try to get some concessions. Like, for example, trying to ease some element of the blockade with Gaza to start maybe opening things up there, to create a situation where in 6 months we might be a step closer to in good faith negotiations. I might start looking at a definitive decision to stop all settlements and to start looking at being open to, because some of those settlements are going to have to be dismantled if there's going to be a serious peace deal. I would start, maybe having some of those conversations. But the thing is, it all seems so pie in the sky when it's Netanyahu and Hamas.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So it'd just be kind of a try to lower tensions where it could be. The only reason it really became an issue for me is that, like, I volunteered for about 2 months last year with the ACLU, and these kind of free speech issues were coming up. But when I was there was never anything as huge as the federal contracts. I don't know I forget what it was called. Marco Rubio's SR1.
Okay,
We
yeah,
did,
let's
like,
not go
there was
into
something
that.
like that in the
So
short
that's a
time
whole
I was
different
there.
topic. Listen, I'm going to let you go. That's another topic, and I don't
Okay.
have time for it today. But I appreciate the phone call. And on that note, I am wrapping. I've got a whole bunch of other stuff to do, and I got a new show tomorrow to plan for. So thanks to everybody who joined me. Thanks for the super chats, the new patrons, the channel members, as well as the new website members. Thanks to everybody. Another stream very soon.